I never actually had real feelings for him, so it doesn't count, my wife said after admitting she cheated with her coworker. So I had her served at work, transferred half the funds, and handled everything through my attorney. On Valentine's Day, the recording was delivered. I am Anthony, 38, and I work as a senior project manager for a construction firm in Denver. My days are structured because they have to be. I am out the door a little after 6, and unless a site is behind schedule, I am home by 5. I like predictability. It keeps things clean. My wife is Ashley, 36. We have been married 9 years, together 11. We own a townhouse on the south side, and we run the mortgage and bills through a joint account. No kids. 2 dogs. From the outside, it looks stable. Ashley works in medical device sales. Her schedule is flexible, but heavy on client dinners, travel, and networking events. She earns well, and in strong quarters, she earns more than I do. That fact comes up more often than it needs to when we argue. She has a sharp personality. If dinner is late, it becomes a lecture about my time management. If I forget something small, it turns into a bigger conversation about how she carries everything and I coast. I am not claiming I am easy either. I can be blunt. I do not entertain circular arguments, but I deal with problems directly. About 3 months ago, Ashley started mentioning a coworker frequently. Kevin, early 40s, recently divorced. At first, she framed him as incompetent. She said he leaned on her too much and did not understand their product line. Then the tone shifted in a way that was subtle but obvious if you were paying attention. He became ambitious. Then he was funny. Then he was going through a difficult transition and deserved patience. I asked one evening, directly and calmly, if there was anything going on that I should know about. Ashley laughed like I had embarrassed myself and said I was insecure. She told me to focus on my own career instead of trying to monitor hers. The delivery was not defensive. It was dismissive, like the question itself was beneath her. About 6 weeks ago, she came home late from a regional training that was supposed to end mid-afternoon. She walked in close to 10, irritated that I was still up. She said they had stayed to debrief and that I would not understand how intense her job could be. I did not argue that night. The next morning, I checked the event schedule she had left on the counter. That was when the timeline stopped adding up. The training Ashley attended was hosted at a hotel conference center about 20 minutes from our place. I am not obsessive, but I am organized. When something feels off, I verify. The printed agenda on the counter clearly showed the final session ending at 4:15 in the afternoon. There was a closing networking block until 5. That was it. She had texted me at 4:40 saying they were wrapping up. Then nothing until 9:12 when she said she was on her way home. I did not confront her immediately. I checked her company's public event page to confirm the schedule. Same end time. I also looked at the hotel bar hours out of curiosity. It stayed open late. That evening, I asked how the debrief went. She shrugged and said it was boring, mostly internal sales metrics. I asked who stayed. She hesitated half a second before saying most of the team. I asked if Kevin was there. She said obviously, he works there. Her tone shifted when I kept asking small, factual questions. Not accusatory, just specifics. Who organized the debrief? Which manager led it? Where in the hotel it took place? She told me I was interrogating her and that it was exhausting to be married to someone who needed proof of everything. I dropped it for the moment. Not because I believed her, but because escalation without information is useless. 2 days later, I noticed her phone lighting up repeatedly on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I do not normally touch her phone. I have never needed to. But the name Kevin popped up 3 times in a row. No group chat indicator. Just his name. When she came out, I asked why Kevin was texting her at 10 at night on a Sunday. She did not even pretend it was work. She said he was going through a rough divorce and needed someone to talk to. She framed herself as generous for listening. I told her plainly that emotional intimacy with a recently divorced coworker at that frequency crosses a line for me. She rolled her eyes and said I was acting territorial. She added that just because a man and woman talk does not mean there is anything inappropriate. What stuck with me was not the content. It was the lack of concern for how it looked. No reassurance. No adjustment. Just irritation that I had noticed. That was when I decided I needed clarity instead of arguments. Clarity, for me, means evidence. Not guesses. Not tone analysis. Something concrete. I did not hire a private investigator or install anything illegal. I am not interested in theatrics that would blow back legally. What I did instead was simple. I paid attention and I verified what I reasonably could. Ashley's travel schedule is shared on the kitchen whiteboard because of the dogs. The following week, she had a client dinner across town. She said it would wrap around 8. At 7:15, I texted her asking if she wanted me to keep leftovers warm. No response. At 9:40, she replied that they were closing out the restaurant. The restaurant she named closes at 9 on weekdays. When she got home, I asked how they stayed past closing. She immediately got defensive and said they must have extended hours. I pulled up the hours on my phone and turned the screen toward her. She did not look at it. She said I was being dramatic and that restaurants do not kick out high-spending tables. Possible. But her receipt, which she left in her blazer pocket the next morning, showed a single entree and 2 drinks charged at 8:12. No multiple team meals. No large group tab. Just one person's bill. That was the first time I felt the shift internally. Not anger. Not even hurt. Just a quiet recalibration. 3 nights later, she fell asleep on the couch with her phone in her hand. Kevin's name was on the screen. I did not scroll for sport. I opened the thread and went to the most recent messages. They were not subtle. Inside jokes. References to staying over. A line from her that said it felt good to be wanted without being criticized. That part was clearly about me. I took photos of the thread with my own phone. I did not wake her up. I did not confront her at midnight. I am not interested in shouting matches that go nowhere. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney during my lunch break. The attorney I spoke to did not push me in either direction. She asked practical questions. How long we had been married. Whether we had children. How our accounts were structured. Whose name was on the house. I appreciated the neutrality. The townhouse is in both our names. The mortgage is joint. Most of our liquid cash sits in a shared checking and savings account. But I also maintain a separate account that my bonus checks go into before I move portions over. Ashley has her own separate account, as well for commissions. The attorney explained that Colorado is an equitable distribution state. Not automatically 50-50, but close in long-term marriages without kids. She advised me not to move money impulsively and not to confront until I was clear on what I wanted. Documentation mattered. Timing mattered. Ashley's behavior escalated in small ways. She guarded her phone more carefully. She took calls in the garage. She accused me of being cold and distant, which was accurate because I was observing instead of engaging. When I declined sex one night because I genuinely did not feel comfortable, she told me I was insecure and punishing her for having a social life. A week later, she came home unusually upbeat, almost giddy. She poured herself wine and said she deserved a break from being judged all the time. I asked her directly if she was sleeping with Kevin. She did not deny it immediately. That pause told me everything. Then she said yes, but not in a remorseful way. She said it like she was admitting to ordering dessert. Casual. Controlled. I asked how long. She said a few weeks. I asked where. She said his apartment mostly, sometimes hotels when they were out of town for work. I remember staying calm. Not because I am above emotion, but because anger would have given her something to react against. Instead, I asked why. That was when she said the line that changed everything. She told me she never actually had real feelings for him, so it did not count. When Ashley said it did not count because she never had real feelings for him, something in me separated cleanly. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue semantics. I asked her to explain what that meant in practical terms. She said Kevin was convenient, that he made her feel desired, that it was physical and uncomplicated. She said it was not like she was in love, so I was overreacting by treating it like a betrayal of the marriage. I told her that for me, physical betrayal without emotional attachment was not better. It was worse. It meant she was willing to risk our marriage for something she did not even value. She laughed. Not nervous laughter. Dismissive. She said I was being dramatic and that adults separate sex from feelings all the time. She added that if I had been more attentive, she would not have needed an outlet. That was the point where I stopped viewing this as reparable. I told her calmly that I would be speaking with my attorney again and that we would be separating. She rolled her eyes and said I was not going anywhere. The house was in both our names. She said I would cool off and realize I did not want to split assets over something that did not even matter. I clarified that I was not leaving the house, and I was not making emotional threats. I was making logistical decisions. That night, I moved into the guest room. The next morning, before work, I transferred half of the joint checking and savings into my separate account. Not more than half. Exactly half. I documented the balances before and after. When she noticed the transfers around noon, she called me repeatedly. I let it go to voicemail while I was in a meeting. Her messages were not remorseful. They were angry. She said I was stealing. She said I was trying to control her financially. I returned her call once I was free and told her the funds were marital assets, and that half was mine. I said any further adjustments would be handled through attorneys. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said I was overreacting to something meaningless. That was the moment we diverged. She kept framing it as a minor lapse. I treated it as the end of a contract. I met with my attorney in person 2 days later. I brought the photos of the messages and a written timeline of when I had first noticed inconsistencies. Not because Colorado requires fault for divorce, but because leverage matters in negotiation. Ashley works in a reputation-driven industry. If her employer became aware of an affair with a coworker, especially one she had influence over, that could complicate her position. I was not interested in revenge. I was interested in clean separation. We drafted the petition and a proposed temporary financial agreement. I asked specifically about serving her at home versus at work. The attorney said both were legal. Serving at work can escalate tension, but it ensures receipt and avoids accusations of evasion. I chose work. Ashley continued acting as if I would back down. She told me she had ended things with Kevin because I was being irrational and she did not want drama. I did not respond emotionally. I asked whether she had told Kevin that she had misrepresented our marriage to him. She said that was none of my business. That told me it was still active. I scheduled service for the following week. I also closed our joint credit card and opened one solely in my name. All standard, all documented. The final piece was the recording. After her admission, I had asked her again, calmly, to explain why she thought it did not count. I recorded that conversation on my phone. Colorado is a one-party consent state. I confirmed that with my attorney before relying on it. On the recording, she clearly states she cheated, that she did not feel bad because there were no real feelings, and that she believed I would not actually leave. I did not send it to her employer. I did not send it to Kevin. I saved it. Service was scheduled for Valentine's Day, not for symbolism. It was simply the earliest date the process server had availability that week. The morning of, I transferred the remaining automatic bill payments into my individual account and removed her as an authorized user. At 10:17 a.m., she was handed the papers at her office reception desk. At 10:19, my phone started ringing. I did not answer the first 3 calls. I was on site reviewing a framing inspection, and I am not the type to mix personal conflict with subcontractors waiting on direction. When I finally checked my phone, there were multiple voicemails and a stream of texts. The tone shifted from anger to urgency within minutes. The first message accused me of humiliating her. She said serving her at work was petty and vindictive. The next said we needed to talk immediately because I was spiraling. Then the messages turned strategic. She said we could handle this privately. That lawyers would only drain money. That adults fix things without involving the court. Not once did she mention regret for cheating. I stepped into my truck and listened to one voicemail fully. She was not crying. She was irritated. She said Kevin had been in the office when she was served, and now people were going to talk. She said I had embarrassed her professionally. That was the moment I decided I was done engaging directly. I sent one text. I told her all further communication would go through attorneys. I told her not to contact me about anything except logistics related to the house, and that even those should be emailed for documentation. Then I blocked her number. I also blocked her on social media and muted her email so it would filter into a folder my attorney had access to. I was not trying to punish her. I was cutting off emotional leverage. Within 20 minutes, she tried calling from a private number. I declined it. Then a message came through from an unknown number asking if I was really going to throw away 9 years over something that did not even matter. I blocked that number too. If she wanted to discuss assets, housing, or next steps, she had formal channels. I was not interested in real-time arguments that reframed cheating as a misunderstanding. Around 4 p.m., my attorney confirmed Ashley had accepted service and that temporary financial protections were in place. That meant no unusual withdrawals, no asset hiding, no sudden debt accumulation without consequences. That evening, I packed a small bag and stayed with a colleague for a few nights. Not because I was forced out, but because distance reduces volatility. Ashley sent an email that night through her personal account. The subject line said we need to fix this. I did not respond. There was nothing to fix. Ashley did not respect the block immediately. The next morning, I received a call from her sister. We are not close, so I let it go to voicemail. The message was short. She said Ashley was devastated and that I was acting extreme. That word stood out to me. Extreme. I did not return the call. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to my attorney and asked her to send a formal notice requesting that third parties not be used to contact me. Within hours, Ashley's lawyer emailed mine asking for a temporary meeting to discuss reconciliation before court dates escalated. Reconciliation was not on the table. That afternoon, Ashley emailed me directly despite the prior instruction. She wrote that she had ended things with Kevin completely. She said it was physical and meaningless. She said she realized I was the stable one, the provider, the person who actually showed up. It read less like remorse and more like recalculation. I responded once, through email, copying my attorney. I stated that her admission of infidelity was documented. I stated that I would not pursue workplace disclosure as long as the divorce proceeded without obstruction. I stated that I expected the house to be listed within 60 days and that I was open to mediation for asset division. Clear, measurable, contained. She replied within minutes asking what I meant by documented. I did not elaborate. On Valentine's Day evening, a courier delivered a small envelope to our townhouse addressed to her. Inside was a flash drive. My attorney had approved the move because it was legally obtained and relevant if disputes arose about fault or credibility. It contained the audio file of her explaining that it did not count because she had no real feelings and that she assumed I would not leave. I was not there when it arrived. I had already moved most of my personal documents to a safe deposit box and stayed with my colleague again. Around 8 p.m., I received an email from her attorney requesting confirmation that I would not distribute any recordings publicly. That told me she had listened. For the first time since this started, the tone shifted from irritation to caution. The day after the recording was delivered, Ashley stopped trying to reach me directly. Communication became procedural. Her attorney proposed mediation dates. Mine responded with availability. There were no more emotional emails about fixing things. No more messages about how I was overreacting. Instead, there was negotiation. In mediation, she tried to reframe the affair as a mutual marital breakdown. She said we had both been distant, that I had been cold, that she had felt unseen. I did not argue feelings. I stayed with facts. She admitted under discussion that the relationship with Kevin had been physical for several weeks. She admitted she had concealed it intentionally. Her attorney steered her away from minimizing language after that. We agreed to list the townhouse. The market in Denver was still competitive, and we both stood to walk away with equity. We split the proceeds evenly after paying off the mortgage and fees. Retirement accounts were divided through standard orders. No dramatic courtroom scene. No public exposure. At one point during a break, she asked quietly if I was really willing to end everything without one more private conversation. I told her we already had the conversation. She told me it did not count because she was not taking it seriously then. I said that was the problem. Kevin never contacted me. Whether that was by choice or legal advice, I do not know. Ashley changed teams at work within a month. I heard that through mutual acquaintances, not from her. By the time the final paperwork was signed, the emotional temperature had flattened. What remained was logistics and signatures. The last time I saw her in person was at the title company when we closed on the house sale. We signed documents across from each other. No raised voices. No apologies. Just the quiet reality of consequences. When we walked out, she said she never thought I would actually leave over something that meant nothing. I told her that was exactly why I did. Then I got in my truck and drove away. It has been 8 months since the divorce finalized. I rented a smaller place closer to my job sites. Less commute. Fewer shared memories attached to walls. The dog stayed with me. Ashley travels often, and practically it made more sense. That was one of the few decisions we agreed on without friction. People have asked if I regret how firmly I moved. If I think there was room to salvage it. The honest answer is no. It was not the sex. It was not even Kevin specifically. It was the framework she used to justify it. When she said it did not count because she did not have real feelings, she revealed how she measures commitment. Value is attached to emotion, not agreement. If something feels small to her, then the damage to someone else is irrelevant. I cannot build a stable life with that logic. I have replayed the moment she paused before admitting it. Not with anger. With clarity. That was the fork in the road. I asked a direct question. She chose a dismissive answer. Everything after that was just paperwork catching up to reality. Financially, I landed fine. The equity from the house and my separate savings covered the transition easily. Professionally, nothing shifted. My work stayed steady because I never let the situation bleed into it. I do not hate her. That surprises people. I just do not trust her. We have had zero contact since the final decree. No late-night check-ins. No accidental run-ins. Denver is big enough for that. I blocked her everywhere and left it that way. Last week, a mutual acquaintance mentioned she is still at the same company. Different team. Kevin apparently transferred offices. I did not ask for details. What I learned is simple. If someone tells you that betrayal does not count because it lacked feelings, believe the part where they minimize harm. That is the operating system. When she said it did not count, she was right in one way. It did not count to her.